Welcome, everyone. Today we're diving into a deep discussion about the Holy Spirit, its nature, how it works in our lives, and that dynamic relationship we can experience. So let's jump right in, starting with the idea that the Holy Spirit isn't just some abstract power, but a personal presence that has been with God's people from the earliest times.
Absolutely. And it's interesting how this really stretches from the Old Testament, where the Spirit empowered artisans for building tabernacles and, even gave Samson what you might call almost superhuman strength, to the New Testament, where Jesus introduces the idea of the Spirit being our comforter, like a personal advocate.
Right, exactly? In the OT, the Spirit was like this empowering force, almost just an energy that allowed people to carry out God's work, sort of like an extra boost, right? But then with Jesus' arrival, things got redefined. Instead of just being power on demand, the Spirit becomes an intimate, ever-present guide. It's like, when you're walking in the Spirit, it's not about ticking off rituals, but having a living connection with God.
Yeah, it's that relationship that transforms abstract knowledge into a vibrant daily experience. And I'm curious, how do you see this idea of the Holy Spirit prompting us in our everyday life?
Well, the prompting of the Spirit is almost like a gentle nudge. Imagine you're in a dark cave with just a weak flashlight, and you take a step forward. You suddenly see something new, something you hadn't noticed before. The Spirit's prompt can be a thought or a feeling that urges you to act, whether that's a simple act of kindness like giving someone a back rub, or a major life decision like changing churches, or even picking up a language again.
I love that analogy, the cave and the weak flashlight. It really shows that once you step forward in obedience to that prompt, unexpected things arise, almost like the path reveals itself gradually, step by step.
Right. And it's important to note that this isn't simply about intellectual exercise. It's not a matter of using our minds alone to decide what's best. It's about listening to that inner prompting that transcends our own thought patterns.
Yeah.
It's like, sometimes you just don't understand at first why you're pushed to do something, but the moment you obey, life takes on a whole new flavor.
That's so true. And I recall a story where someone felt this inexplicable urge, like, to give a back massage to elderly guests, even though all the logic in the world would have said, no, that's not my role. The prompt was so compelling that eventually it led to an experience that was deeply meaningful. It clearly distinguishes between what we experience on a physical level versus a spiritual level.
Exactly. And that brings us to the idea of the spirit versus the flesh. The Bible makes clear that while our bodies and minds operate in this three-dimensional physical world, our spirit is meant to connect with something greater. Think about Genesis. God blew his breath into Adam, and that breath is that unique element we call spirit. Unfortunately, because of the fall, that connection was severed, and it's through Jesus that we regain a deep, transformative union with the Holy Spirit.
Right, so before salvation, everyone has a spirit, but it's like there's a void, an emptiness that nothing worldly can fill. And then through accepting Christ, that void is filled with the presence of the Holy Spirit, making life not just about survival, but about experiencing something, divine.
Absolutely. And interestingly, some like to talk about dimensions, the third and the fourth dimension, in explaining this. Our everyday world is physical, height, length, width. But the fourth dimension, that's a metaphor for the spiritual realm, a realm that's outside the limitations of time and space, where God and all spiritual beings reside. It's like saying God is not just somewhere else. God is the dimension in which our true selves exist.
Right, it's a way of expressing that while we live physically here, our true identity and connection to God belong in a realm that's fundamentally different from the visible, material world. And there's this contrast between literal manifestations, like speaking in tongues, and then the real lived experience of walking in the Spirit.
Exactly. And walking in the Spirit isn't just a one-off sporadic event. It's a daily journey, a relationship where you're constantly discerning, obeying, and experiencing the presence of God. Sometimes it's obvious, as in that powerful push you feel in a quiet moment, and sometimes it's subtle, like a thought that gently nudges you towards a decision.
That's right. And I think sometimes people even come to church with an expectation of a ritual, a set procedure. But if you lean too much into the ritual side, you might miss the heart of it, which is this living, dynamic relationship with God. It's about more than just
Yeah.
ceremony. It's about the genuine movement of the Holy Spirit in every facet of your life.
And, that connection is manifested in noticeable ways. I mean, look at how the Spirit not only guides personal decisions, but, transforms the atmosphere in a worship setting. When people gather genuinely, not just to go through the motions, the room can become alive in a way that feels almost tangible.
Yeah, exactly. As you mentioned earlier, it's that feeling when you're praying aloud, when you're not just reciting words but directing your heart fully to God. And then suddenly, in the midst of all the noise of everyday life, you sense an overwhelming presence, a kind of divine clarity and peace that tells you, this is it, this is your home.
Right? And it's not about the performance or the ritual. It's that raw, unfiltered encounter with a God who is beyond our human logic. People might even say it's like having a personal attorney or advocate in your heart, someone who represents you in the divine realm. And the fascinating part is that the cumulative effect of these experiences transforms you. Over time, your life starts to reflect this deeper spiritual truth.
I totally agree. And even when it comes to discernment, like that moment you mentioned where everything seemed fine, but then a nudge told you something was off, it's that Holy Spirit's way of guiding you away from potential pitfalls. It's such a delicate balance, isn't it? Trusting what you feel over what appears perfectly logical.
True, and here's where I respectfully challenge a common point. Sometimes people might argue that if the prompting of the Spirit is as clear as some say, then why isn't it universally obvious? Well, I'll say it's because each person's relationship with the Spirit is uniquely personal. It's not like a loud announcement, it's a gentle whisper that you learn to discern over time, and that really depends on your own intimate walk with God.
Absolutely, I agree. That internal discernment is key. And it's interesting how, over time, as you consistently obey these prompts, even ones that seem small at first, your ability to recognize and trust those leadings only deepens. It's almost like building muscle memory for spiritual sensitivity.
Right, and let's not forget the impact that these experiences have on community. When you come together with others who are also tuned into the Holy Spirit, it creates an environment where the presence of God is palpable. The collective worship, the shared discernment, it's like a dynamic exchange of divine energy. It demonstrates that this isn't just about individual experiences, it's about the community of believers growing together in faith.
Exactly. And that community dynamic is something I've seen change lives. People step into situations outside their comfort zones, almost like they're following a spontaneous direction that they never would have conceived on their own. It's fascinating how, sometimes, the smallest act of obedience leads to profound transformation.
Yeah, definitely. And it's important to remember that the Holy Spirit isn't constrained by our cultural labels. Whether you're from a Korean Pentecostal full gospel tradition, a modern contemporary church, or even someone still exploring your spiritual journey, the essence of encountering the Spirit is the same. It's that heartfelt relationship that moves you, that guides, reassures, and sometimes even challenges you.
Right? And speaking of challenges, there's also this caution against reducing the Holy Spirit to a mere instrument for miracles or a checklist of spiritual gifts. It's not about just speaking in tongues or performing signs. It's about the deeper reality of living in connection with God day in and day out.
Exactly. Because when the experience of the Spirit turns into a sort of transactional, ritualistic process, you miss the point of a relational, living connection. It's like having a smartphone. You wouldn't just use it to make calls, you use it in a myriad of ways, But if you only looked at the phone as an answering machine, you'd lose the full value of what it can do.
Yeah,
The same goes for the Holy Spirit.
that's a great analogy. And I find it interesting how modern technology, like generative AI, can sometimes remind us of this concept. You prompt the AI, you get an immediate response, a bit like receiving a prompt from the Holy Spirit. Yet, unlike the AI, which simply executes programmed commands, the Spirit's prompts are flexible, deeply personal, and come with the invitation to transform you from within.
Right. The key difference is that while AI simply processes input, the Spirit transforms your heart. The divine prompt isn't just about getting a result, it's about growing, learning, and being led into unexpected paths that reveal a greater purpose. And almost every story we've touched on echoes this experience. A reminder that God's guidance is available to all who are willing to listen.
Absolutely, and that resonates deeply. When you embrace that relationship, the everyday becomes extraordinary. Even mundane actions take on a new spiritual significance because you're walking in alignment with a living, breathing presence. It really offers a fresh perspective on life in all its dimensions.
Yeah, it turns life into a journey where each step is an opportunity to experience something miraculous, a daily unfolding of divine love and guidance. And that's what the Holy Spirit is about, not merely a set of rituals or doctrines, but a living, interactive relationship with God.
Right.
It shifts from being a theological concept into a personal, transformative experience.
And I think that's where the beauty lies. When our experience of God moves beyond just concept and becomes our very way of life. Not just a belief system, but an encounter that informs every decision and every relationship.
Exactly. And as we continue to share these experiences and insights, we invite everyone listening to explore that same relationship. It isn't reserved for a select few. It's accessible to anyone who opens up and truly listens.
Yeah.
And maybe, bit by bit, you'll find that the Spirit's gentle prompt leads you down paths you never imagined.
Well said. And in closing, I'll just say that whether it's that simple nudge to do something for a loved one, a subtle shift in how you view everyday moments, or a profound inner conviction during prayer, the Holy Spirit's presence is the heartbeat of a vibrant living faith. It turns our ordinary lives into something profound and transformative.
Absolutely. So, if there's one takeaway today, it's to encourage each one of us to not just know about the Holy Spirit, but to experience Him day by day, moment by moment, walking with us through every twist and turn on our spiritual journey. And that, my friends, is a life-changing invitation.
Definitely. Thanks for this rich conversation. I hope it inspires everyone listening to open their hearts and let that divine connection lead them, even if it starts with a small, almost imperceptible nudge.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining in. And I encourage everyone to stay tuned for our next conversation as we continue to explore the deep mysteries of faith and the ever-present guidance of the Holy Spirit.
Exactly, thank you. And remember to listen to those gentle prompts. They might just be the beginning of your next great adventure.
And until next time, keep walking in the Spirit, appreciating every moment of that divine companionship. Take care, everyone.
Thanks and goodbye.